Howdy, and welcome back to Social Cognition, I believe number 10, where we will talk about theoretical backgrounds of prosociality and morality, continuing the topic that we already started in session number 9. And in particular, here is what we're going to do. We will add some theoretical backgrounds by first looking at the moral foundations theory. Then we'll work through cognitive developmental theory of morality. Then we will take a look at the social intuitionist model of morality, and then focus on some dual process perspectives, both with regard to morality and prosociality, and finally move one tiny step further to also discuss not only dual process, but also choice difficulty. But let's get started with the moral foundations theory. And in order to do that, let's recap what I've already sort of begun to highlight in the lecture before. So the idea behind moral foundations theory is that it assesses morality as a concept by considering 5 facets of it. So the theory would posit that there are 5 facets to what people consider when they ask themselves what they find moral or right to do. And these 5 facets are harm care, fairness and reciprocity, in-group and loyalty, authority and respect, and purity, sanctity. So what I want to do now is give you an impression of what is captured by these 5 different facets by raising an example question for them. So how will we find out whether a person cares a lot about the harm care facet? We would ask them how immoral they think it is to kick a dog in the head very hard. And then their response would let us know how much they care about the harm care facet. For the fairness reciprocity facet, an example would be how immoral is it to make a secret arrangement to only hire people of your own gender? So really this is about fairness, and this is about how to repay others for kindness. The in-group and loyalty aspect of morality, according to moral foundations theory, deals with questions such as how immoral is it to openly gamble on your team losing? Authority and respect deals with questions like how immoral is it to slap your father in the face with permission? And then finally we have the purity sanctity facet, and this asks, for instance, how immoral is it to receive a blood donation from a pedophile? So these 5 dimensions are stipulated as facets of what it means to be moral as a kind of like a superordinate concept, but also moral foundations are kind of like almost like a facet to which we can subscribe, right? So I, as a person, might be more interested, or I might care more about the harm care facet than, for instance, the authority and respect facet. And this might be a good way to describe inter-individual differences between different people. So while I care a lot about facet 1 and not so much about facet 2, maybe you care a lot about facet 2 and not so much about facet 5. So can we see some differences in people depending, so kind of like trying to explain how much they care about these different facets? There's actually some data that I want to show you where we can see 2 things. First of all, so what do we have here? We have 3 plots where we have the mean subscription to these 5 moral values, moral foundations. So you can see color-coded, blue is harm, and then the yellow color would be purity in this case. And what we also have plotted is how their respondents' political orientation was. So on the left of each plot, we have the orientation of liberals, then we have moderates in the middle, and then on the right we have conservatives. So we have information about the political orientation of respondents. And then lastly, we have 3 plots. So there's also some cross-cultural or international comparison going on. So we have data from the US, we have data from South Asia, and we have data from Latin America. And what do we see? Well, we see, first of all, that let's focus on the cross-country difference. The patterns between countries actually look relatively similar. So there may be some differences, but overall the pattern looks pretty similar. And what is the pattern? The pattern is that political orientation seems to matter, right? What we see is that conservatives seem to evaluate all the 5 facets in a pretty similar way. They all seem relatively similar in their importance. But among liberals, we can see that there's a clear divide there's kind of two groups in terms of the valuation of these 5 moral foundations. So what do we see? We see that liberals, on average, across these 3 countries, across these 3 world regions, they value harm and fairness more, or they find violations of harm and fairness more problematic than violations of in-group authority and purity. So if we were to take a look at this in our overview again, we could say harm, care, and fairness and reciprocity, they seem to be rather universally agreed upon as it being quite egregious if someone violates these foundations. But with regard to the other 3, so in-group authority and purity, there people differ in how important or how terrible they find violations of these foundations. Okay, so this is an overview of the moral foundations theory. Next, I want to move on to the development theory of morality. So taking kind of like a developmental perspective, trying to find out how do people create morality, how do they learn about morality, and how do they sort of understand what it means, or at different levels of their development. And in order to do that, what I'd like you to do is to pause the video and fill in a question about a specific dilemma. And we will later use this data to look back on the explanations and kind of try to assign them to the different stages of moral development in this cognitive development model of morality. So if you feel like that's fun and you want to participate, go ahead and leave your answers anonymously, please, in this form, and then you and other classmates can go through these answers and use them as an exercise to categorize moral reasoning in terms of the rational cognitive development model. So please pause the video now. Welcome back, and let's take a brief look at the dilemma that you just looked at. What you looked at was the so-called Heinz dilemma, and this is about a woman on her deathbed, and there's a potential drug that might help her, but it's sold at a really high price and her husband can't afford it. Now this person is debating whether they should go and just break into the person's laboratory who created the drug, and whether they should steal it to make their wife better. And this Heinz dilemma is a classical case in which we can use to exemplify different stages of moral development according to Kohlberg's rational model of morality. So in particular, this is about the reasons. Why or why not should Heinz break into the laboratory to steal a drug for his wife? Before we jump into trying to assign a level of moral development to the answers given to the Heinz dilemma, of course, what we should do is learn about the different stages of moral development according to this model. So let's do that. Let's jump in. What we have in this model is 3 levels, and then each level has 2 substages. The first level is a pre-conventional developmental level. It has the stage of obedience and punishment, and the second stage of self-interest. So you kind of level through. As your development increases, you move from stage 1 to stage 2 to the next level, conventional morality. There we have stage 3, interpersonal conformity, and 4, authority. And then level 3, where we have the post-conventional morality with stages 5, social contract, and 6, universal ethics. So this is just the overview of what this model would capture. But now let's dive in and take a closer look at what these individual levels and stages are actually about. So let's first talk about level 1, the pre-conventional level of morality according to Kohlberg. And of course, we should start with stage 1. And in this theory, we can kind of look at different answers to the Heinz dilemma as giving us examples for what the stage of development is about. So stage 1 is about obedience and punishment. What would a person who has this kind of stage of development of moral reasoning, what kind of an answer would they give to the Heinz dilemma? An answer we might expect would be Heinz should not steal the medicine because he will go to prison for it, which will mean he is a bad person. So this is clearly focused on abiding by some rule, a law for instance, and being punished if you don't do it. And another example, now arguing for the other direction, would be Heinz should steal the medicine because his wife told him to, which means he's a good person if he does it. So this is also about, just bowing to authority, doing in this case what his wife told him to do. Now, stage 2, this stage is characterized to be about self-interest. So someone who is kind of in this stage of moral development would give reasoning for the Heinz dilemma like the following. So basically, they would try to answer the question, what's in it for me? While in stage 1, we have direct consequences of their actions that are the main focus. In stage 2, this is about what's in it for me. And an example answer would be, Heinz should steal the medicine because he will be happy if he saves his wife. So this is about Heinz's outcomes. And for the other direction, an argument could be, Heinz should not steal the medicine because he will be unhappy if he gets caught and has to go to prison. So again, here the main interest is the self-interest. What will happen to Heinz himself? And if that is the driving force of the reasoning, then we would categorize a person or like an argument to be in this self-interest stage. Okay, so this was it with level 1, so stage 1 and 2. Let's take a look at conventional morality. Here we have stage 3, which is about interpersonal conformity, or we could also say basically good intentions as characterized by social consensus. So this is really about sticking to the social rules. And a person or a response that is characteristic of this stage 3 would, for instance, be Heinz should not steal the medicine because stealing should not be done. He can't be blamed for his wife's death because he tried everything the law would allow. And to argue for stealing the medicine, one could say Heinz should steal the medicine because his wife expects him to, and he should be a good husband. So this is really about the shoulds. This is about sticking to some norms. Okay, and then the 4th stage, so leveling up one more, would be about authority. Stage 4 is about bowing to social order, and it emphasizes how important it is to obey the law and to obey social contracts. So it's also about shoulds, but it's not so much about kind of the good person perspective. So in the interpersonal conformity layer, we see some emphasis, or Kohlberg argues there's some emphasis on the good girl, or like being naughty kind of implication of behavior, while the stage 4 is more about actual culpability and the duty to uphold laws. So if we looked at an argument from that perspective, it would be, for instance, Heinz should steal the medicine but face the legal consequences of stealing. Or the other way around, Heinz should not steal the medicine because it is illegal and the law prohibits it. So here in this stage, morality is basically predominantly dictated by the force of law and authority. Now, if we manage to go through stages 3 and 4 of our development, there's still more space to level up in this model of morality to level 3, post-conventional morality, where again we have 2 stages. So here, let's begin with stage 5, the idea of a social contract. The idea that the world is viewed as holding different rights and values, and then maybe we have some laws, but really the laws are there to support us in making the right decisions for sure. But what really matters is the greater good for the greatest number of people. So that is the perspective here. So there is some recognition that law exists, but the idea that is followed is that also there might be something that's more important than the law, a social contract to make stuff as good as possible for as many people as possible. And an argument from the perspective of this stage 5 of moral development would, for instance, be that Heinz should not steal the medicine because the druggist has the right to fair compensation. Or, in the other direction, he should steal the medicine because everyone has a right to live regardless of the law. Now, finally, stage number 6, considering universal ethics. So this stage is characterized by moral reasoning, which is based on abstract reasoning, using some legal rights and surpassing legal rights as the principle of moral decision making, and actually asking about categorical, universal, ethical laws. So this is about really very high-level abstract thinking. And an example would be, for instance, Heinz should steal the medicine because saving a human life is more important than respecting someone's property. So here we can see the trade-off between two high-level ethical goods, moral goods, life and property. Or in the other direction, Heinz should not steal the medicine because others may need the medicine just as much, and all lives are equally important. And here, this clearly appeals to fairness as a moral good. So stage 6 is about very high-level moral reasoning that's quite difficult to accomplish. Now that we've spoken about these 6 stages of moral development according to this Kohlberg rational model of morality, what I'd like you to do is to go through people's responses to the Heinz dilemma, pick 2 of them, and for the responses that you've picked, actually assign a level and a stage of moral development, go through the list and see which one of these you think actually fit well, and then explain why you made this choice. You will see in the form that I'm going to add the link to, and also it's on the slide. You will see that there's always space for 2 raters, so you can make your own rating and then also see if someone else agrees with you or if someone else disagrees with you. And I suggest that you pause this video now and have some fun with this. Hi, welcome back. Now that you've worked through the Heinz dilemma, I hope first of all that you've found some examples that actually matched well with the stages that I just introduced to you. But I think now is also a good time to talk about some criticism related to the Kohlberg rational model of morality. One of the pieces of criticism that you might have also discovered as you were trying to rate different statements is that actually sometimes these categories can be pretty difficult to distinguish. So you might have wondered about this already when I was talking about them, just very roughly introducing them to you. But I think it probably, hopefully, became even more apparent when you tried to assign them yourselves. So these categories or like the stages of moral development, they might be a nice model to try to understand different levels of moral reasoning, but they are not super sharply defined, so that it is often difficult to say, oh, is this type of reasoning in stage 4 or in stage 5, or is it in stage 3 or is it in stage 4? An additional piece of criticism about this model is that it's neither culturally nor gender neutral. So this is mostly based on research with Western men, and it doesn't extend well to other cultures and genders. And there's also some cross-situational variance in what kind of statement is ascribed to which stage. So finally, we could ask ourselves, well, is this actually, the fact that we can look at these moral arguments the way that we've done it here with the Heinz dilemma and really try to, provide moral reasons for why we think he should or should not steal medicine. Is this actually evidence that this is the whole process? Is rationality and moral reasoning in the sense of explaining your actions or your opinions about moral questions really all there is? Or is there actually more to it?